Oddly, I do believe that there is a particular circumstance where I would back the idea of reparations for uh, people who have dealt with slavery from their past generations and their families. Now, I know that would be bristling to a lot of people, but make sure you understand that. My idea of how to do reparations would be very much unlike what modern leftists in this country would like to do. Uh, their ideas are, clearly bonkers. So what the left would like to do on some form or another is essentially take money from people in the country, most likely white people, and take that money and give it to black people. Now, this is a really bad idea for many, many reasons. One, the most obvious being is no human being alive in this country today had anything to do with slavery. And if their great grandparent or great great grandparents did, so what? That's not how anybody does anything anywhere. That's not justice. Anyone who thinks that's justice is perverse, bonkers, out of their mind. So the other problem, of course, being is how do you classify who's a victim in all this? I mean, obviously, there has been a lot of mixing over the years. How much percentage does a person need to be of lineage uh, where they had an ancestor who was a slave at some point in this country, where you actually figure out that they get it or they don't? Can you self-identify as black, as the left seems to think some people are allowed to do? Uh, are we going to hold a paper bag up to people's skin and do a comparison? If you are lighter than, you get nothing, and if you're darker than, you do, or come up with gradients in between. So I'm saying that to be facetious because obviously people who suggest direct transfer of money from those who are living today to others who are living today are people who do more feeling than thinking. Now, put things into perspective. Now, on a certain level, I do believe that slavery has set back uh, Black Americans to some extent. Um, Obviously, they started out in kind of a precarious position. I mean, they did have one mild advantage is that they did, when slavery ended, they did speak the language and they knew the lay of the land, as opposed to other immigrants who come in maybe not knowing the language and having to figure out the culture and everything like that. There was probably a fairly long period uh, where discrimination slowed the advancement of Black people as individuals and possibly even impacting their ability to lift the next generation up to a better financial level than there were. Uh, I'm not saying this in the absolute terms, but I do think on certain level that does exist. I mean, uh, there, uh, the history of Black Americans is absolutely unique to that group. Other immigrants didn't go through the same process for sure. And if nothing else, President Johnson's war on the Black family uh, is something that probably needs some remediating to a certain extent. Essentially, he created programs, or at least backed programs that he helped push through Congress, that many in his own party told him were going to destroy the Black family. And once they got done destroying the Black family, they would start eroding the rest of Americans as well. Uh, do gooders can never be swayed from taking a path, no matter how much logic you throw at them, because they're doing everything with their feels. Uh, for what Johnson did to Black Americans, maybe some form of reparation does need to exist, but definitely not the leftist idea. Not only wouldn't, not only would the idea be absolutely preposterous to try to implement in the way they're thinking, uh, it would create rifts in this country, would make the kind of rifts that Obama created uh, seem gentle and calm in comparison. We may never recover from the kind of reparations the left would like to impose upon us, because you'd have everybody having to try to prove who they were back to a certain period in time. And then, of course, once it's over, it wouldn't work. It would fail miserably. And their answer, of course, would be, well, do it again and do it more. Because that's always the answer to the left. If something fails miserably, do it again, do it more. Because doubling down always fixes the problem. So I've described what I don't think would work and what I don't think we should do. So I think, because the thing is uh, nobody alive is responsible for this. But there are some institutions that exist that do bear some responsibility for it. And the institution in question is the federal government. The federal government, if you want to look at it in a straight up way, our government, the people who make up our government, uh, decided at the Declaration of Independence that ending slavery was too steep a task to take on. Now, I understand the politics of the time. I'm not arguing it, but the result was people were attempting to end slavery at that point, and the decision was to not end it. Then, when we come to the Constitution, once again, now mind you, there wasn't as many people pushing for an end because everyone was trying to figure out how to bring everybody together as rapidly as possible. So the idea was to make the Constitution as the least controversial as humanly possible. So, but that was another instance where potentially slavery could have ended, but government decided that the day that slavery was going to end was going to be someplace off in the future. Now, they laid some good groundwork at that point, but they didn't end it. Then, once we get to the point where the Civil War occurs, and it does finally happen, um, the right constitutional amendments were put forth. The idea was that, we'd essentially fix things. Black people were to be treated as citizens regardless of what was going on previously in their life. But the problem is, then the Supreme Court stepped in and basically undermined everything those amendments to the Constitution were meant to do. We had living constitutionalist Supreme Court members who decided that Jim Crow laws and segregation were acceptable because they were popular, at least in a good chunk of the country. They set things in place to make to basically slow roll uh, the transition that would allow Black Americans to become fully integrated into our society. And then once again, as I mentioned on President Johnson, who um, is, in my mind, nearly as big a villain as Woodrow Wilson. Not that big, but pretty close. But his programs, he was such. Sorry, I'm trying to. He's a person who makes me want to throw out every Air Force word I've got. Uh, he's such a lunkhead, such an idiot, that nothing anybody could tell him would sway him from where he was going. And a lot of the problems Black America is facing today are directly because of him. Um, Just absolute idiocy. So, what I'm trying to lay down here is it's not my fault that Black America is having problems. It's the government. The government kneecapped Black Americans, generally figuratively, leading us to a situation where there is some issues. So, how could we implement reparations? Well, my idea is all the federal lands that the government holds illegally would be turned over to Black Americans as reparation. Now, you understand the U.S. Constitution, the way it lays out things. The federal government, the only land that it's allowed to hold is one, the area of Washington, D.C., which is specifically delineated in the Constitution saying the area around the Capitol to a certain amount of mileage is exactly what the federal government owns. Then they are allowed to make agreements with the states to lease or buy land specifically for military installations and nothing else. The federal government cannot hold on to land just for the hell of it, like they do in large portions of the western United States. They cannot have national parks. It's illegal. They can't hold on to the mineral rights of places and decide, oh, well, today we're going to lease them, tomorrow we're not, and today we're going to let people abuse the area, and tomorrow we're not. They have no ability to do that. It's absolutely against the Constitution. So, into that, I would also throw in uh, the coastal waterways of America, essentially the east and west coast areas of the ocean out to the international limits. That's part of this land that the feds control. Now, that gets a little bit dicey on how that actually plays out, and I might talk about that in a future video, but that's a little bit much for this. So, we have all this land that actually has, now, certain parcels of it, of course, are absolutely worthless. I mean, there's desert with no minerals and other things like that out there, and there's plenty of other things that could be worth a fortune. So rather than like take all the land and, I mean, this could be a way, but I would advise against it. Take all the land that the federal government holds illegally and divvy it out into parcels to your target group for reparations, and then it would be kind of like a lottery. You either you get something completely worthless, something that might put a few bucks in your pocket, or something that might boost you from one income level to another. That would probably be detrimental. So what I would suggest is that all this land be put into some form of land holding corporation, or possibly multiple corporations, either based on like a region of the United States or even by state. But so you have this land holding corporation, and then what would happen is your target for reparations would get shares in it, and then essentially your target for reparations, and I don't know how we'd want to define that. And here's the fun part: I don't care how you define it at this point, and I'll explain why. If people who have any claim to damage from slavery through the generations want reparations through this, I'm happy for it, even if I don't get to participate. Okay, so what'll end up happening is you have all this land gets transferred over because it's inclusive of the very valuable, the moderately valuable, and the not so valuable. All the shares will have some form of market value. Um, those who want immediately to cash out will sell. Those who want to look at this corporation as something that could be long-term benefit to them could participate in the formation of its governing structure and come up with a way to make this land all work in such a way that is beneficial to all the stockholders. So I know a lot of people will be howling like, "Oh my, you can't be seriously about the national parks being given away." And okay, I'm being a little facetious here, but so my answer to that would be, what, you don't trust Black Americans to take good care of something like Yellowstone or Yosemite? I mean, they have the same intelligence as we do. There's no difference between Black and white Americans. They'll recognize the value of a national park as what it is. Its value is in its beauty and its people having the ability to access it. Uh, and I suspect they will do a much better job than the federal government. They'll probably do better on the upkeep. They'll probably find a way to allow more people to have access, and they'll probably get more money out of it in the end. So the reason I don't have a problem with this at all, other as opposed to like various leftist ideas, is because I can almost guarantee I'm going to get, and essentially all Americans are going to get, incredible value out of this exchange. And the reason being is, once this land, because most of this land actually costs us money to maintain because of the way the federal government does things. If this land went into proper use, not only would it stop costing us something, but it would generate more wealth than anything we've done in this country in probably 100 or 150 years. You would have a situation where vast amounts of wealth would be generated without any printing of money. It could actually cause uh, beneficial deflation. I would think this would be so beneficial that all Americans would benefit from the economic activity that would come out of it. So instead of the leftist plan, where you just basically make everybody angry at each other by taking money from one group and giving it to another, and then in the end, there's no benefit at all. In this one, nobody's taking anything from anybody. We're taking it from the federal government, who is illegally holding it right now anyway. So it's not theft like the other plan would be. It's just people getting what they deserve. And I think a lot of the shareholders who get these reparations are going to make a really good go at it. They're going to make money. They're going to make very good use of the land. They're going to be fantastic stewards. And everybody in the US gets the benefit at the same time. So that's my idea for reparations. And although, uh, you know, it sounds a little bit on the facetious side, I'm serious. I would fully accept this. Um, I mean, it's probably, it's far more fair than taking money from one group and giving it to another. You're just taking it from somebody who doesn't need it and who isn't using it anyway, the federal government. Uh, so I think it has the hallmarks of fairness. I don't think it'll cause very much divisiveness. I mean, at first, some people say, "Well, why are they getting it and we're not?" And there'll be some infighting about who gets what. But I think the divisiveness will be over very quickly once the economic benefit starts flowing to everybody, which will happen fairly rapidly. Um, so that's an idea. Now, mind you, I'm fully conscious of the fact that no one will ever go for that. But yeah, next time someone brings up reparations, maybe throw out the idea that yes, let's give them the uh, let's give Black Americans who have a generational tie to slavery, let's give them the land. I mean, there was some promise of land at the end of the Civil War anyway, so this is a way to make up for things. Okay. Well, feel free to discuss that in the comment section. As always, I try to answer questions and get involved in the discussion when it's there. Please like this. Please subscribe if you haven't. Hey, thank you very much. Thank you for spending time with me this evening. Hope to see you in a future video.